we are attacked. We've been, sorry, if you Google my name, you will see the BBC, NBC, MSNBC, NPR, LA Times, New York Times. I mean, there's almost The Guardian. There's almost not a publication that hasn't attacked us and called us these names and said that we are responsible for, fomenting hate all throughout Africa, and that we're supporting and we're behind these laws that have been passed that are very harsh.
It's a privilege to have joining us today Sharon Slater. And Sharon, you're president of an organisation called Family Watch International. And before we get into that a little bit, would you just like to say hi to our viewers and our guests, Sharon?
Sure. Hi. Thank you for having me, and it's an honor and a privilege.
Well, honestly, the privilege is ours. Now, I understand Family Watch International, it kind of says what it does on the tin, doesn't it? So your role, as I understand it as an organisation, is to keep an international watch on things that are good for family and things that are good for protecting families, and also things that seem to be attacking families. And from an international perspective, coming out of the US to lots of other countries in Africa and around the world, attached to aid these days seems to be an awful lot of stuff that undermines what you might see as the good conventional family model. Tell us a bit about what you do, and if that's the case, and a little bit more about the history of your organisation.
Sure, thank you. Well, we've been around since 1999, so we've been around for about 25 years now, and we serve a kind of a niche in the pro-family, pro-life movement. We work at the United Nations. We have consultative status there. So we've advised over 80 different governments on family policy issues, and many of those issues relate to sexuality, gender identity and issues. And we promote policies that bring the best outcomes for men, women, and children, but especially those that will support and protect the family as the fundamental unit of society. And this is a big challenge. There is an assault all across the world, but especially at the United Nations. And you mentioned, foreign aid that's coming. The UN agencies funded by the donor countries are pushing agendas that undermine family, marriage, life, but especially the health and innocence of children who will form the future families of the world.
Just a little bit more about the history then. What kind of drove you to get involved in this, first of all?
Well, I got invited to a UN conference, and I was a mom. I had just put my youngest in school, and I really had not been very savvy or very well informed on world issues. And somehow I found myself in this UN conference, and I was told to monitor and write down anything positive that would be said about family or family issues. I'm in this room, and I'm hearing all this radical stuff in Geneva at the UN Human Rights Council being promoted by all these different government representatives. And finally, one of them raised their hand and said, I think we need to protect religious and cultural values in this document. And you would have thought that she dropped a bomb in the room. I mean, just everyone erupted and started attacking her and, saying, well, you got to have precedents for that. Do you have any citations from past UN documents? And I started shaking because I had the very citation she needed in a pamphlet I had been given. And I had even starred the references to support for religious and cultural values. So, I went and I was shaking. I went over to the corner of the room. I got my bag. I pulled it out, put it to the right thing, folded it over, put it on her lap. And all of a sudden she looked down and she raised her hand. She read off these citations and she won the argument.
So the right person in the right place at the right time.
Exactly. She pulled me out in the hallway and she said, who are you? And I was a mom, but like you said, I happened to be at the right place at the right time with the right tool to impact negotiations that could affect families worldwide. And that moment changed my life.
Some might call that providence. We have supporters from all faiths and none. A lot of our supporters will, of course, be Christians, but we do have people from all faiths and none who will listen to this and who support us as an organisation, because we focus on a thing which you focus on a lot, which is the fact that actually man-woman marriage is a really good thing. It brings about better results than anything else. And this isn't just an opinion. It is a value judgment, but it isn't just a value judgment. It seems to be backed up by all the international research and evidence that it's a really good thing. But, Sharon, as you've pointed out, there seems to be stuff going on whereby countries are using their aid in order to encourage other countries to promote and extol anything but normal family values. And it's a bizarre thing because they will know, as you and I know, as everyone knows, the value of family. So I'm just wondering, why is this happening? I mean, is it happening? Have I got the wrong end of the stick? And if it is happening, why is it happening?
I'm glad you asked that question. I actually have a book called Stand for the Family, where I have a whole chapter that says who could be against the family and why. And I'm happy to make that book, Stand for the Family, a call to responsible citizens everywhere, available free electronically to your supporters or viewers if you want to put a link, next to the video when this is over. But we have found that those who want government power and want to take over governments in societies know that if they can destroy the family unit, that they will be able to take over societies. History shows that that's what happens. And so there's an all-out assault on children because they know they're going to be the rising generation. They're going to form the future family. So the number one agenda we fight everywhere at the United Nations and in countries around the world, because of the policies being pushed by the United Nations agencies, is to protect the health and innocence of children from radical sexualization and indoctrination, and then mobilizing them once they've sexualized them, indoctrinated them, to be politically active, to push these agendas that are destructive to the family. I want to add, too, that we have something in common with your organization. You mentioned, before we started the interview, that your organization takes its positions based on social science data and, not taking religious arguments. Well, we are the same. We agree with you wholeheartedly that hundreds, if not thousands of years of studies and social science data and history shows that men, women, and children, and especially children, fare best when they are able to have a stable, married mother-father family. And there is not anything that you could measure that would not show this, whether it be, poverty, wealth, education attainment, drug abuse, sexual abuse, whatever you could possibly measure. And you know this well, right? Hundreds and hundreds of studies will show across all cultures and countries that it's the family, the natural family, that is that fundamental unit that will bring the best outcomes. And that's what's under attack, because those family units, because they are the fundamental unit of society, they hold up the structure of society and governments. And so, again, there's an all-out assault, especially on children.
Thinking about the points you've made, and when I get the privilege of going up and down the country and talking to thousands of our supporters, as well as really interesting people on the internet like this. But what I talk to our supporters about sometimes is that very point you're making, that when you look at family, and it's the basic unit of government, isn't it? It's the smallest unit of government. And good families are strong, good families are independent. They don't need big governments. They don't want big governments. They pass on customs from one generation to the next, etc., etc. And that's a threat to anybody who wants control and power. And historically, if you look at Soviet Russia, for example, the way you break down the family unit, it's obvious, and they've done it before. It's three ways. You trivialize sex, you make it so that anybody can sleep with anybody, it doesn't make any difference. You undermine the nature of long-term relationships, and you undermine the role of male and female. And you say there is no male and female, we're all homogenous. And those three things basically do away with the family unit. And so you then have individuals, atomized individuals, as you might say, and we've got an interesting interview on that with an expert from a former CIA agent who looks at Soviet tactics and maps how, in fact, they're being used on the West now to atomize the family. So you're absolutely right. But I'm going to push back a little bit, because it seems weird to me, because a lot of the people that are in senior positions in government, in the UN, etc., they're happily married. They've got families themselves. They know how good it is. So why would they want to destroy that and make it so nobody else kind of has that privilege?
Well, I gave you one reason, and that's to get government power, even to topple governments if you can destroy the family unit. But there's many, many motives, and one is profit. So let's start with sexualizing children. And just to give you context for what's happening at the UN, the UN consists of 192 plus UN member states. It's governments, and they're supposed to be making these decisions, coming together to solve world problems. And then the UN agencies are supposed to carry out their mandates from these different documents they negotiate on different issues. Well, the problem is the system has been turned upside down. And the UN agencies, you should think of them as like NGOs or non-governmental organizations, because they've been captured by the donor countries. And that's mostly the Western countries like the EU, even the UK, Canada, the United States. And they have been funding programs through these UN agencies going in the ground, especially in developing countries, to sexualize the children through the number one thing that we fight, that we have to fight to protect the family. And it's something called comprehensive sexuality education. This is not your normal education. This is designed to separate children from their religious and cultural values, their parents' values, to sexualize them, to teach them that they have sexual rights, and in order to have that, they have to know about sexual pleasure and sexual patterns. I mean, we even have a document, and I'd be happy to show you on some slides if you wanted, but in Zimbabwe that has the EU logo on it. I think it might even have the UK logo. We can take a look at it. The Irish Aid logo on it, the Gavi Immunization Organization logo. And it is one of these ones in Zimbabwe that separates children from their values. It's for ages starting at age 10. But it actually brings children away from their parents' values. And when they talk about sexual rights, it asks children to learn about bestiality, pedophilia, voyeurism, exhibitionism, sexual pleasure with, body excrements. And I mean, the agenda is beyond what people could possibly imagine. And so because it's so hard to believe, we only, make these statements or these claims based on evidence that we provide the public, very accessible. If you go to our website at Stop CSE, CSE is the acronym for Comprehensive Sexuality Education, so stopcsE.org, you'll see our 30-minute documentary, The War on Children, the Comprehensive Sexuality Education Agenda, where we take you inside these manuals. Then you can go to the top of the website and click around into our Defender's Toolkit, and you'll find the actual programs that I'm talking about. And there's multiple programs that the UN is pushing, because they know if they can raise up the rising generation in their radical sexual and gender and ideologies and indoctrination, that they'll have the future, they'll have the society, because they'll have the teachers and the government leaders and the presidents and everyone who is going to form that society. And then just one more point that I add is, once they've done that, then they've got complete control with pushing their agenda. And another reason why people are after this, I said money. Now, once you sexualize children, what do they need? Sexual counseling, condoms, contraceptives, abortions, even now Planned Parenthood, that's at the center of this, that's partnering with all the UN agencies, that's International Planned Parenthood Federation. They provide all these services. Even they provide hormones for those who would be dependent upon that for the rest of their lives, who are trying to assume the opposite gender or a non-binary gender, if that were even possible, which it's not. But all the things that they're pushing, first of all, there's a lot of money in it. But second of all, it also limits population. You sexualize children, they have a hard time getting married, having stable families, and they lead them towards abortion as an international right. You promote homosexuality, that's sterile sex. You promote transgenderism, those that are pushed to assume a different gender, if they take puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and especially, of course, the surgeries, which 98% of them, once they start on this, medicinal path, end up having the surgeries as well, then they are infertile for life, completely infertile. So all of these things are leading to the depopulation of the world. So a third agenda, I would say, for destroying the family by sexualizing children as one of the main methods is to population control, to lower the population of the undesired populations in the developing countries, where also then the European countries, the developed countries, can come in and take over their resources. I do have to share a recent quote by the top diplomat, the international diplomat at the EU, who last year, I think it was, he actually said, Europe is a garden and the rest of the world is a jungle. And in order to protect the garden, we have to go out in the jungle and take out the weeds. Otherwise, they'll come in and they'll overrun us. And so, this is a kind of a racist, actually, population control agenda that is very, very destructive to the family and especially children. You mentioned there's power, there's profit, there's these things, but there's also those who are engaged in these kind of lifestyles. They want to promote them as healthy and normal. They don't want them to be stigmatized. So you see this major effort through comprehensive sexuality education to destigmatize abortion, destigmatize sexuality, to say children have a right to sex, and no one can even criticize this because that would be hate speech. So you see even freedom of speech is being limited and curtailed all across the world to even speak out on these issues.
I have teachers saying to me that they're explicitly told not to refer to marriage and long-term relationships in relationships and sexual education. That they're to focus on other things. And you think, well, that's a funny thing to be part of a teaching agenda, to say, well, actually, let's not teach kids what's actually good for them and what's good for society. Let's teach the other thing instead. Doesn't make an awful lot of sense. So you've gone over the motives, lots of different things there, and it's probably a combination of all of them in different flavors depending on who you're talking to and where you're coming from. And we could add, promotion is another P, isn't it, really? So you've got power, you've got profit, you've got population control, and promoting individuals' agendas and very small activist group agendas. Absolutely right. But you're standing against that, your organization, and you're saying, well, actually, we want to say there's a better way, there's a better outcome for society, there's a better outcome for mankind. And you've probably answered the question, I suppose, but that doesn't make you phobic, does it? It doesn't mean you hate and fear anybody, let alone an entire group of people, because our position would be, well, people are free to do whatever they want in a liberal democracy within the law. But that's very different to what you teach children. Children are blank slates, and it's very, very easy to program children. So you have to be very, very careful what you say to them. So how do you deal with criticisms that actually you're just a transphobic organisation, you're just a homophobic organisation, etc., etc.? How would you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I say it's absurd. It's just absurd, because when you publish data, they call that hate, right? When we publish data that just shows the outcomes for different family structures, what happens to children in different family structures, what happens to people who engage in sexual behaviors outside of marriage, whether they be heterosexual or homosexual, the outcomes are not good. And so you might say that our approach is actually a compassionate approach. That's what, we help people understand the statistics and what are the likely outcomes outcomes to these different behaviors that they may be engaging in. And lo and behold, all the studies, all the medical facts show that if children avoid sexual contact until they are married to one partner, indefinitely, they avoid all of these negative outcomes and they experience generally all these positive outcomes. So we are attacked. We've been, if you Google my name, you will see the BBC, NBC, MSNBC, NPR, LA Times, New York Times. I mean, there's almost The Guardian. There's almost not a publication that hasn't attacked us and called us these names and said that we are responsible for, fomenting hate all throughout Africa and that we're supporting and we're behind these laws that have been passed that are very harsh in Africa, some with even a death penalty and, harsh prisons, and the interesting thing is we were even against those laws. Like you say, we also support the fact that people have their own liberties. Once they become adults, they can make choices that are harmful to them. We can provide and publish data that'll show them the things. But when it comes to children, that is a completely different story. We will fight, tooth and nail in the policy level to ensure that these radical comprehensive sexuality education programs that are designed, to get to children at the earliest age to change their worldview on sex, sexuality, and gender, and thus their actions and sexualize them and bring them down these very harmful trajectories. That is what we're fighting, and that's why we are targeted. We have been very successful, and George Soros's group, Open Democracy, started the attacks and the assaults on us because the first article they wrote was about how we were stopping comprehensive sexuality education throughout Africa. And I don't know if they then thought, let's try to destroy Family Watch because they're having such an impact at the United Nations and across the world. Let's say they're the ones behind all these laws and make up all these lies and let's trigger all the other media to write the same stories so that, there's almost not anywhere you can't go that would, promote these lies. But the beautiful thing about this is we thought the governments would stop working with us, that we were going to lose our ability to be effective, but actually it's helped us even become more effective because when potential donors see the impact that the other side says that we have, so the governments that want to preserve the family, especially in African countries, the governments that want to protect children from these agendas, they come to us. They want the help and they listen and they ignore all the media because everybody knows that the media, largely the mainstream media, has been corrupted and, are promoting political agendas, ideological agendas, and not news and not facts. This ideology and this fantasy that is being pushed all across the world, and because you've got it in the UK, this is, first of all, I think one of the number one destroyers of the family, because if you confuse someone about their gender, it's going to be very, very difficult for them to form stable relationships and marry a partner of the opposite sex and to have a family. But the destruction, when you talked about phobia, is it phobia to help children and those who make the policies around children understand where this leads? Where, after they have these procedures in this unrealistic attempt to become something other than what they are biologically, a lot of them lose their sexual functioning, their ability to even have sexual pleasure, but especially they lose their fertility. I mean, what child could possibly comprehend the implications of that?
It all sounds pretty grim, and it is pretty grim, but we know, even from the UK, that actually in some areas the tide is beginning to turn. We've had a CAS review recently, published just at the time of recording in the last couple of days, actually, which has just called out the fact that lots of things are being done on an ideological footing, not on a research and evidence base, because there is nothing there to justify it. And you and I know that the biological fact that, people at conception are male or female, And that's pretty clear. And that's, if somebody can tell you you can think yourself from a male to a female or vice versa, can you trust anything else they say as a politician? Well, the answer has to be no. The key question for you really, and for our listeners to kind of learn and think would be, what do we do? How do we get from where we are now to and all we're looking for, as far as I understand, is just an open society where evidence and facts are given to people so that they can make informed choices. So children are not told, well, actually, we're not going to tell you about the consequences of these alternative types of sex that we're saying you can have now as long as you consent. We're not going to tell you about the benefits of growing up with a biological mum and dad. We're not going to tell you about the detriment of having loads of sexual partners before you settle down with somebody, because we don't want you to do that. Actually, all we're asking for is a level playing field where kids are told factually from an evidence base what's good for them and what's not. So how do we get from where we are now to that point where we do have an evidence-based, open, factual playing field?
I believe knowledge is a power. Becoming informed is the first step to making a difference. And I have seen many people make a difference. Mothers, fathers, grandfathers, experts, teachers, policymakers. But getting informed is key. Find out what's being taught in your schools. Go to your schools. Don't be content with any kind of summary, but look at the curriculum. What is being shown? What outside entities? And become a voice, first of all, in your own communities, in your own schools. You want to protect your children. You want to immunize them. You want to find out what they're learning. And then you want to speak up and speak out. You can also weigh in with your governments, lobby them, let them know you're concerned about this pandemic treaty, learn more about the pandemic treaty, learn more about this Summit for the Future and the global policies that are being created that affect all the countries of the world. So there's many things you can do. Just do one thing and you will be on your way.
And that is such a great message. Just do one thing. Not everyone can be a UN ambassador advisor like you are, but everyone can look after their own marriage. Yep, so it's good. Everyone can teach their children right
and grandchildren.
Yeah,
I have 20.
Right. Well,
I'm concerned. They need to be taught. They need to be immunized. They need to understand these issues so that they're not going to be affected by the culture and the movies and what's coming to them in this education system.
That's right. And if all you can do is drop the odd word into the conversation here and there, that's that. But if you can do more, if you can write to your MP, if you can write to your papers when things come up, I'm going to follow you and say, just in case anybody's listening who isn't on our mailing list, go to c4m and .org.uk and join our mailing list too, because then you can find out what to complain about, what to speak about, what to make your voice heard about. If you can go and be a school governor, go and be a school governor. If you can be a trustee of a local health board, go and do that. Get involved at the level in which you have the competency to get involved and make your voice heard. That's how this works, because we're not going to persuade the other side. The best thing we can do is encourage a lot of people who agree with us to get involved in the debate, because it is a numbers game. And the decision makers and the politicians and the policy makers are populists. And they're scared of people saying one thing. Let's make them scared of people saying the other thing too. So maybe they'll have a chance of making the right choices and the right decisions. And even, dare I say, Sharon, if you can get involved in the political process, get a bunch of friends, go and join a local political association, influence who the candidates are, even stand for election in whoever your preferred party is or something.
Very good point.
Whatever you can do, get it done. It sounds like if people want to, they can actually change the world. How cool is that? And they can get involved. Listen, Sharon, it's such a joy to talk to you. We're going to have conversations on lots of other things, I think, as time goes forward. But can I thank you for your time? Thank you for what you're doing. I just encourage you to carry on. Sounds great. And we look forward to speaking to you again sometime. Sharon Slater, what a privilege.
Thank you so much. It's been a privilege and an honor to meet with you. And also, I'm impressed by what you're doing with your organization in organizing people to stand for marriage. And please, if we can support you in any way, we are here for you.